I stared at the plate of food in front of me, Derek's words still ringing in my ears. Wow, Lo, I didn't think it was possible, but your cooking gets worse every day. I sighed, setting down my fork. Is it really that bad? I asked, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. Derek scoffed, leaning back in his chair. Worse. I wouldn't even feed it to a stray dog. You can't cook, you can't clean, and you can't even give me a kid. What good are you? His words cut deep, piercing the fragile remnants of my self-esteem. I opened my mouth to respond, but his mother, Gwen, beat me to it. Now, Derek, she chided, though her tone held no real reproach. Don't be too hard on the girl. It's not her fault she's a failure in every sense of the word. I flinched, her insult stinging like a slap to the face. It wasn't the first time they'd belittled me, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. Living with Derek and his mother was a constant battle, a war of attrition against my very soul. As I cleared the table and set about washing the dishes, my mind drifted back to the countless times I'd tried to conceive, only to be met with disappointment and Derek's scathing remarks about my inadequacy. The words barren and useless echoed in my mind, taunting me with my perceived failures. Little did they know, I had recently discovered something that would change everything. While scrolling through social media forums, I came across a series of posts made by Derek himself, mocking my lack of culinary skills and expressing his desire for a divorce. He painted himself as the victim, a man trapped in a loveless marriage, seeking sympathy from strangers online. As I finished the dishes and retreated to the solace of my bedroom, I couldn't help but feel a sense of determination rising within me. For too long, I had allowed Derek and Gwen to diminish me, to strip away my sense of self-worth. But no more. It was time to take control of my life, to break free from the shackles of their cruelty. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to fight for my happiness, my dignity, and my future. This was just the beginning, the spark that would ignite a fire of change, burning away the chains that had bound me for far too long. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of Derek's voice, already berating me for some perceived failure. Leela, where's my clean shirt? I have an important meeting today, and you couldn't even do one simple task. I hurried into the living room, bleary-eyed and still in my pajamas. I'm sorry, Derek, I'll get your shirt ready right away. Gwen clicked her tongue disapprovingly. Honestly, Lila, it's like you don't even try. No wonder my son is so disappointed in you. I bit my tongue, holding back the retort that threatened to spill forth. Instead, I scurried to the laundry room, grabbing Derek's freshly pressed shirt from the pile of clean clothes. As I handed it to him, he snatched it from my grasp, his expression one of disdain. Took you long enough. At this rate, I'll be late for work. I'm sorry, I mumbled, but he had already turned away, his attention focused on his phone. The rest of the day passed in a blur of monotony. I went to work, enduring the usual drudgery of my insurance job, only to return home and face the endless cycle of chores and criticism. Derek and Gwen seemed to take particular delight in pointing out my every flaw, no matter how insignificant. Did you even bother cleaning the bathroom today? Gwen sneered as I entered the kitchen to start dinner. Of course I did, I responded, my voice weary. Well, it doesn't look like it, Derek chimed in, his tone dripping with contempt. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised. You're useless at everything else. Why would cleaning be any different? I fought back tears as I turned my attention to the stove, determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Little did they know, their constant jabs were only fueling the fire burning within me, a fire that would soon consume their complacent cruelty. As the evening wore on, another source of tension emerged, Derek's gambling addiction. He had been losing money at an alarming rate, and the stress of his mounting debts was palpable. You need to get your shit together, Gwen hissed, her voice low but venomous. If you keep pissing away our money like this, we'll end up on the street. Derek slammed his fist on the table, his face flushed with anger. Back off, Mother. It's none of your business how I spend my money. It is when you're gambling away our future. Gwen shot back, her eyes blazing with fury. I watched the exchange unfold, a twisted sense of satisfaction creeping over me. Their dysfunction, their toxicity, it was all coming to a head, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the whole house of cards came crashing down. As I lay in bed that night, The weight of Derek's emotional and financial abuse pressing down on me, I made a decision. No more would I be the victim, the punching bag for their cruelty. It was time to take control, to exact my revenge and reclaim my life. The thought filled me with a sense of determination, a steely resolve that would carry me through the battles to come. Derek and Gwen had no idea what was in store for them, but they would soon learn the true cost of their actions. The breaking point came a few nights later, when Derek stormed into the house, reeking of alcohol and anger. "Where the hell is my dinner, woman?" he slurred, his words slurring together. I stepped out of the kitchen, wiping my hands on a towel. "It's almost ready, Derek. Just give me a few more minutes," he sneered, his eyes narrowing. "That's what you always say. Useless, just like everything else you do." Before I could respond, Gwen chimed in from the living room. "Don't talk to her like that, Derek. She's trying her best." "Her best?" he spat, rounding on his mother. "Her best is pathetic. I should have left this worthless sack years ago." Something inside me snapped at his words. Years of pent-up frustration, anger, and resentment came bubbling to the surface, and I couldn't hold it back any longer. "That's enough," I shouted, my voice trembling with fury. "I've had it with your constant abuse, your endless belittling. I'm not going to take it anymore." Derek's eyes widened, caught off guard by my sudden outburst. "What did you just say to me?" "You heard me," I continued, emboldened by my newfound courage. "I'm done being your punching bag, your emotional doormat. I deserve better than this, better than you." Gwen opened her mouth to interject, but I cut her off with a sharp glare. "And you're just as bad as he is, enabling his behavior, joining in on the insults. Well, no more." I turned back to Derek, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "I'm leaving you, Derek. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going to make sure you pay for every ounce of suffering you've put me through." For a moment, Derek was speechless, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. Then his expression twisted into one of rage. "You ungrateful bitch," he snarled, taking a step towards me. I stood my ground, unflinching. "Don't even think about it," I warned, my voice low and steady. "I'm not the same doormat you've been kicking around all these years." With that, I brushed past him, ignoring his sputtered threats and insults. I quickly packed a bag with some essentials and headed for the door, my heart pounding in my chest. As I stepped outside, I took a deep breath of the cool night air, a sense of freedom washing over me. I knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in years, I felt alive, invigorated by the prospect of reclaiming my life. I made my way to my brother Jason's house, knocking on the door with a newfound sense of purpose. When he opened it, his eyes widened at the sight of my disheveled appearance and the bag slung over my shoulder. "Lila, what's going on?" I steeled myself, pushing back the tears that threatened to spill forth. "It's over, Jason. I'm leaving Derek for good this time." Without hesitation, he ushered me inside, wrapping me in a comforting embrace. As I clung to him, the weight of years of abuse finally lifting from my shoulders, I knew that this was just the beginning of my journey towards reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my sense of self-worth. And Derek and Gwen? They would soon learn the true meaning of karma, the consequences of their actions rippling outward like a tidal wave, sweeping away the foundations of their smug superiority. After recounting the years of abuse I had endured at the hands of Derek and Gwen, Jason and his wife Emma were furious. Emma's eyes blazed with anger as she pulled me into a tight hug. "That bastard," she spat. "How dare he treat you like that? You don't deserve any of this, Lila." Jason nodded in agreement, his jaw clenched. "We're going to make him pay for what he's done. You have our full support, sis." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, grateful for their unwavering support. With their help, I knew I could finally break free from Derek's toxic grip. Over the next few days, we hatched a plan. First, I contacted a divorce lawyer to begin the legal process of separating from Derek. The lawyer assured me that with the evidence of his abuse and financial misdeeds, I had a strong case for securing alimony and a sizable settlement. Next, we turned our attention to building a solid case against Derek. Jason and Emma helped me gather documentation of his gambling debts, his online rants, and any other evidence we could find to expose his true nature. "We need to hit him where it hurts," Emma said, her voice steely with determination. That money-grubbing prick needs to learn that there are consequences for his actions. It was then that I remembered Derek's estranged aunt, May. She had always been critical of his behavior, and she held the keys to the family inheritance. If we could get her on our side, it would be a devastating blow to Derek and Gwen. I reached out to May, explaining the situation and pleading for her help. At first, she was hesitant, but as I revealed the depth of Derek's cruelty and Gwen's complicity, her resolve hardened. That boy has always been a disappointment, she fumed, and to think his mother enabled such despicable behavior? It's unforgivable. With May on board, our plan began to take shape. She agreed to withhold the inheritance from Derek and Gwen unless they made amends for their actions, essentially leaving them financially destitute. As the preparations continued, I couldn't help but feel a sense of empowerment coursing through me. For years I had been the victim, cowering in fear and submission. But now the tables had turned, and it was my turn to dictate the terms of our engagement. Derek and Gwen had no idea what was coming, but they would soon learn the true price of their cruelty. With each step we took, I could feel the weight of their oppression lifting, replaced by a newfound strength and determination. This was more than just revenge, it was a reclamation of my dignity, a declaration that I would no longer be defined by their abuse. I was taking back control of my life, and nothing would stand in my way. As the plan solidified, I found myself growing more confident, more assertive. The old Lila, the meek and submissive doormat, was gone. In her place stood a woman emboldened, a warrior ready to fight for her rightful place in the world. And when the time came to confront Derek and Gwen, to unveil the truth and watch their carefully constructed facade crumble around them, I would savor every moment. They had sown the seeds of their own destruction, and I would be there to reap the bitter harvest, a testament to the power of resilience and the indomitable human spirit. A week after I left Derek, my phone rang. It was him, no doubt looking to smooth things over with empty promises and hollow apologies. I steeled myself before answering, determined not to let his manipulations sway me. "What do you want, Derek?" I asked, my voice firm. "Lila, listen," he began, his tone sickly sweet. "I think we've both said some things we didn't mean. Why don't you come back home, and we can work this out like adults?" I scoffed. "Work it out? You mean like how we've worked it out for the past few years, with you berating and belittling me at every turn?" "That's in the past," he insisted. "I've changed, I promise. Things will be different." I could practically hear the smugness dripping from his words, as if he expected me to come crawling back at the first sign of his supposed contrition. "Save it, Derek," I spat. "I'm not falling for your lies anymore. I want a divorce, and I'm not going to let you sweet-talk your way out of this." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when he spoke again, his voice was laced with barely contained fury. "Listen here, you ungrateful little wench. You're going to sign those divorce papers, and you're going to do it without causing any trouble. You got that?" I smiled, unfazed by his empty threats. "Or what, Derek? You'll insult me some more? Throw a tantrum like a petulant child? I'm not afraid of you anymore." He sputtered, caught off guard by my newfound defiance. "You'll regret this, Lila. Mark my words, I'll make your life a living hell." "I doubt that," I replied coolly. "In fact, I think it's going to be the other way around. You and your mother are going to pay for every ounce of pain and humiliation you've put me through." With that, I ended the call, a sense of triumph surging through me. The old Derek, with his empty bravado and hollow threats, no longer held any power over me. Over the next few days, Jason, Emma, May, and I finalized our plan. We gathered all the evidence we could find, from financial records to social media posts, painting a damning picture of Derek's misdeeds and Gwen's complicity. As the day of our confrontation approached, I could feel the anticipation building within me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the chance to strip away their false bravado and expose them for the cruel, vile people they truly were. We rehearsed the confrontation, going over every detail with meticulous care. I practiced my lines, my body language, determined to project an aura of confidence and strength that would leave no room for doubt. Finally, the day arrived. I took a deep breath, steeling my nerves as I approached the house I had once called home. Even from the outside, I could sense an uneasy cleanliness, as if Derek had already moved on and brought his mistress in before our separation was finalized. As I stepped inside, the stale air hit me like a slap in the face, a reminder of the oppressive atmosphere that had once permeated these walls. But now the tables had turned, and it was my turn to dictate the terms of our engagement. Derek and Gwen sat in the living room, their expressions a mix of surprise and contempt. Before they could utter a word, I launched into my prepared speech, laying out the evidence of their cruelty and financial misdeeds with surgical precision. As I spoke, I could see the color drain from their faces, the realization of their impending downfall slowly sinking in. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, utterly blindsided by the depth of our preparations. And then, just as I was about to deliver the final blow, the front door opened and May stepped inside, her steely gaze sweeping over the room. "Hello, nephew," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "It seems we have much to discuss." The look on Derek and Gwen's faces as May entered the room was priceless. Their smug arrogance melted away, replaced by a mixture of fear and disbelief. They knew, in that moment, that the game was up. "Aunt May," Derek stammered, attempting to regain his composure. "What are you doing here?" May fixed him with a withering glare. "Don't play dumb with me, boy. I'm here because of the shameful way you've treated this poor woman." She gestured towards me, her lips pressed into a thin line. Gwen, never one to back down, tried to interject. "Now, May, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. Derek and Lila are just going through a rough patch, that's all." "A rough patch?" May scoffed. "From what I've heard, this has been going on for years. Years of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, and outright cruelty." I watched as Derek's face contorted with rage, his fists clenching at his sides. "Who have you been talking to? Lila's been filling your head with lies, trying to turn you against me." "Enough of your lies, Derek," I spat, stepping forward. "I have all the proof I need right here." I brandished a thick folder stuffed with documentation of his misdeeds. Gwen's eyes widened as she caught sight of the folder, and her complexion paled. "Derek, what have you done?" Before he could respond, I launched into my prepared speech, laying out the evidence of his gambling addiction, his financial mismanagement, and his vile online rants about me. With each word, I could see the confidence draining from their faces, replaced by a growing sense of dread. "And that's not all," I continued, my voice ringing out with newfound strength. "I have witnesses, people who can attest to the years of abuse I've endured at your hands." As if on cue, Jason and Emma entered the room, their expressions steely and resolute. They stood beside me, a united front against the crumbling facade of Derek and Gwen's lies. Derek's gaze darted from me to Jason, then back again, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Gwen, for once, was rendered speechless, her usual bravado nowhere to be found. It was at that moment that the front door opened once more, and a young woman stepped inside. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene before her, clearly not expecting such a confrontation. "Blake?" Derek croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman, Blake apparently, fixed him with a look of utter disgust. "You lied to me," she hissed. "You told me you were single, that you were ready for a committed relationship." Derek opened his mouth to respond, but May cut him off with a sharp wave of her hand. "Don't bother, Derek. Your web of deceit has unraveled, and we've all seen the truth." She turned to Blake, her expression softening slightly. "I'm sorry you got caught up in this mess, dear, but rest assured, my nephew and his mother will face the consequences of their actions." Blake nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I want nothing more to do with him," she spat, shooting Derek a venomous glare before storming out. The room fell silent, the weight of the confrontation hanging heavy in the air. Derek and Gwen sat frozen, their carefully constructed facade of lies and deception crumbling around them, and as I looked at their stunned faces, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication wash over me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when the scales of justice finally tipped in my favor. With a deep breath, I gathered my strength and delivered the final blow. "Derek, Gwen, your reign of terror is over. I'm suing for alimony and restitution, and I won't stop until you've paid for every ounce of suffering you've caused me." Their reactions were priceless, a mixture of disbelief, anger, and fear that left me savoring the sweet taste of revenge. They had sown the seeds of their own destruction, And now they would reap the bitter harvest. As I turned and walked out the door, Jason and Emma by my side, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The shackles of oppression had been broken, and I was finally free. Free to live my life on my own terms, to embrace the future with courage and determination. And as for Derek and Gwen, their day of reckoning was just beginning. The aftermath of the confrontation was like a whirlwind, with events unfolding at a dizzying pace. As Blake stormed out, her face twisted with rage and betrayal, Derek made one last-ditch effort to salvage his crumbling lies. "You can't seriously believe her," he sneered, gesturing towards me. "She's just trying to turn everyone against me, to take me for everything I've got." I fixed him with a steely glare, unfazed by his pathetic attempts at manipulation. "Save your breath, Derek. The jig is up and you know it." Jason stepped forward, his expression thunderous. "Don't even try it, man. We have more than enough evidence to bury you in court." "Evidence?" Gwen scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. "What kind of evidence could you possibly have?" In response, I tossed the thick folder onto the coffee table, its contents spilling out in a cascade of damning documentation. Financial records, printouts of Derek's online rants, even photos and witness statements. It was all there, laid bare for them to see. Derek's face paled as he rifled through the papers, his hands trembling with barely contained fury. "Where did you get all this?" he demanded, his voice rising in pitch. "That's not important," May interjected, her tone stern. "What's important is that we now know the truth about your gambling addiction, your financial misdeeds, and your despicable treatment of Lila." Gwen opened her mouth to protest, but May silenced her with a withering glare. "Don't even try to defend him, Gwen. You're just as culpable in all this, enabling his behavior and joining in on the abuse." Derek's eyes darted around the room, searching for any shred of support or sympathy, but he found none, only the cold, hard reality of his lies and misdeeds laid bare before him. "You can't do this to me," he snarled, his fists clenched at his sides. "I'll fight this, every step of the way. You won't get a damn cent from me." I couldn't help but laugh at his empty bravado, his desperate attempts to cling to the illusion of power. "Oh, but we will, Derek. We'll take everything from you, just like you tried to take everything from me." Emma stepped forward, her expression one of steely determination. "We're not just going after you for alimony and restitution. We're going to make sure you face the full consequences of your actions, legally and financially." Derek's shoulders slumped, the fight draining from his body as the weight of our words sank in. He knew, in that moment, that he had lost. That his carefully constructed web of lies and deceit had finally unraveled, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. Gwen, ever the loyal enabler, tried one last time to defend her precious son. "This is outrageous," she spat. "You can't just come into our home and make these wild accusations." But May wasn't having it. She turned to her sister-in-law, her eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen before. "Enough, Gwen. Enough of your blind loyalty and willful ignorance. It ends here, today." With a heavy sigh, May reached into her purse and withdrew a thick envelope. "This is my last will and testament," she announced, her voice ringing out with finality. "And as of this moment, both you and Derek are hereby disinherited." The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the sharp intake of breath from Derek and Gwen. Their faces, once so smug and arrogant, now twisted into masks of disbelief and horror. "You can't do that," Derek sputtered, his voice weak and hollow. But May simply shook her head, her expression unyielding. "I can, and I have. Consider it the price you must pay for your cruelty and deceit." And just like that, the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Derek and Gwen, stripped of their ill-gotten wealth and inheritance, were left to face the harsh reality of their actions. Their world, once so carefully constructed on a foundation of lies and manipulation, had crumbled to dust. As I looked at their defeated faces, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph wash over me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when justice was finally served, when the scales were balanced in my favor. And as I turned and walked away, leaving Derek and Gwen to wallow in the wreckage of their own making, I knew that this was just the beginning. The future was mine to shape, to mold into something beautiful and fulfilling, a future free from the shackles of their oppression. The road ahead would be long, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive, empowered by the knowledge that I had taken back control of my life. And as for Derek and Gwen, well, they would have plenty of time to reflect on the consequences of their actions, to learn the bitter lesson that karma has a way of evening the score. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and emotional upheaval. True to my word, I pursued alimony and restitution from Derek with relentless determination, leaving no stone unturned in my quest for justice. With the mountains of evidence we had gathered, my lawyer made short work of Derek's feeble attempts at defense. His gambling debts, his online rants, and his emotional abuse. It was all laid bare for the court to see, painting a damning picture of his true character. Derek and Gwen, now disgraced and disinherited, could do little more than seethe in impotent rage as the legal system ground them down, stripping them of their ill-gotten wealth and privilege. With each court ruling in my favor, I could see the life draining from their eyes, the realization setting in that their reign of terror was truly at an end. And through it all, I stood tall and unwavering, bolstered by the support of Jason, Emma, and May. They were my rock, my foundation in the face of Derek and Gwen's increasingly desperate attempts to salvage their crumbling empire. "You'll regret this, Lila," Derek spat one day after a particularly devastating court ruling. "Mark my words, you'll never know peace as long as I'm breathing." I fixed him with a steely glare, his empty threats bouncing off me like water off a duck's back. "Save your breath, Derek. You've lost, and you know it. It's time you accepted the consequences of your actions." With those words, I turned and walked away, leaving him to stew in his own impotent rage. His threats were hollow, his power stripped away by the weight of his own misdeeds. As the legal battles raged on, I found myself slowly shedding the shackles of my past, the weight of Derek and Gwen's oppression lifting from my shoulders. With each victory, each hard-won settlement or ruling in my favor, I felt a renewed sense of strength and determination, a fire burning within me that could not be extinguished. And as the dust finally settled, the final judgments handed down, I found myself in a position I never could have imagined. Financially secure, emotionally liberated, and finally free from the chains of my toxic marriage. Derek and Gwen, on the other hand, were left destitute and disgraced, their once lofty status crumbling around them like a house of cards. May had seen to it that they were evicted from the family home, left to fend for themselves in the harsh reality they had so callously inflicted upon others. As I stood in my new apartment, surrounded by the trappings of my newfound independence, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment wash over me. I had fought the good fight, weathered the storm of their cruelty, and emerged victorious, a testament to the indomitable human spirit and the power of resilience. In the months that followed, I threw myself into my career with renewed vigor, channeling my newfound confidence and determination into every aspect of my work. It wasn't long before my efforts were rewarded, and I found myself promoted to a senior position within the firm, a testament to my skills and dedication. But perhaps more importantly, I began to rediscover the parts of myself that had been suppressed for so long. My passions, my dreams, and my zest for life. I took up new hobbies, explored new interests, and surrounded myself with people who truly cared for me, who supported and uplifted me rather than tearing me down. And as for the prospect of a new relationship, well, I wasn't closing that door entirely. But this time I vowed to approach it with wisdom and discernment, never again allowing myself to be subjugated or diminished by another person's cruelty or insecurity. As I stood on the balcony of my apartment one evening, gazing out over the twinkling lights of the city, I couldn't help but marvel at the journey I had taken. From the depths of emotional and financial despair, I had risen like a phoenix from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. And in that moment, I made a silent vow, a vow to never again allow anyone to strip me of my dignity or self-worth. I was the master of my own destiny, the architect of my own future, and no one, not Derek, not Gwen, nor anyone else, could ever take that away from me again. With a deep breath and a smile on my face, I turned and went back inside, ready to embrace the next chapter of my life with open arms and an unwavering spirit. The past was behind me, and the future lay ahead, brimming with possibilities and the promise of a life truly lived on my own terms.